You mentioned something about studying this crisis in the Russian or Soviet schools and so forth. And as we have learned today, we always knew that the pledge by the United States not to invade Cuba was part of the consideration for the agreement. I was wondering if this pledge has been memorialized in a document, in a government document on your side, where students of this particular subject matter can refer to?
Not really. As far as I remember, as we were taught this particular part of history, it was never mentioned that it was put in some written form in the documents. So it was, my understanding was that it was a gentleman agreement between two governments.
The reason why I ask is because it called my attention now that with these ballistic issues that you're referring to today, you're looking for a binding legal position that the United States doesn't have. Now, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, you were able to take somebody's word in the hope that it would be passed on administration after administration. What's the difference now with these new issues?
Well, you know, we had an unfortunate experience. When the process of unification of Germany was coming to its logical end, to unification itself, we were giving the same oral assurances that no NATO infrastructure, military infrastructure, would be moved to the territory of East Germany. And it was never fulfilled by the American side. Several years has passed and the NATO military infrastructure in East Germany. Later on, we were giving the same assurances that there would be no NATO enlargement to the east at the expense of the former Warsaw states. And that promise was not fulfilled. So, as President Reagan said, trust but verify. And nowadays we would prefer to put everything on the paper, you know.
Would you be willing to speculate and share with us what would happen if the United States were not to observe the pledge today?
Excuse me?
Would you be able, would you like to speculate or share with us what is your opinion as to whether or not, or what would the Russians do if the United States were to observe and honor the pledge that it made not to invade Cuba, notwithstanding the fact that the Soviet state doesn't exist anymore?
Well, it's a highly speculative question, but I believe that nowadays the civilization came to such a point that the invasion of sovereign country is not considered to be a very good manner of dealing in international relations, you know.
Actually, there is a written agreement signed between Kissinger and Dobrynin and Gromyko in 1970 as a result of the possibility of reopening the submarine base in Cienfuegos. It has not been published, but the understanding between Kennedy and Khrushchev of '62 was actually written down and signed. It has never been published, but there were some modifications. For instance, the United States included that the presence of submarines was also not to be allowed, not just missiles. That was one of the conditions. But on the other hand, the U.S. committed itself in writing not to invade Cuba. There is such an agreement.
Well, we have to research that then. Yes, please.
Recently there was an incident between the President of the United States and the President of Russia, where a microphone was left open, and President Obama told President of Russia, don't worry, wait until after the elections, I'll be more flexible. What do you think he meant by that?
I don't know. What do you think by that?
So I would assume that Russia would like President Obama to win.
Well, you know, frankly speaking, we have a very good experience of working with both administrations, either Democratic and Republican ones. And if you look into the history, the majority of the important agreements that were signed between Soviet Union and Russia, or Russia with the United States, were signed during Republican administrations. Also, the Republicans are tough negotiators. But I wouldn't agree if somebody tells me that the Democratic negotiators are not tough, because I witnessed the process of negotiations of the new START treaty, and believe me, it was not easy for us. So, yes, please.
Mr. Stepanov, thank you for being here, first of all, and I get very clearly why it was important for Russia to establish a breachhead in the détente position. Maybe if I had been on the other side, I would have thought something similar. But today, what strategic interest does Cuba have for the Soviet Union versus other interests that it may have? It would seem to me that it would be minimal, would it not?
For Russia, you mean?
Correct.
Well, Cuba is the old friend, and Russian people always felt special affection towards Cubans, and we believe that Cuban people and Russian people are friendly towards each other, and we have a very good a long history. Actually, this year we celebrated 110th anniversary of establishing diplomatic relations between then Russian Empire and Cuba. So we continue our relations, our embassies work, we have trade representatives. The trade turnover is not gigantic, I would say. It's close to $280 million a year, probably. We have several projects in exploring oil and gas fields in Cuba. We have educational exchanges. We have some projects in biochemistry, some scientific research. We have exchange of students. It's a good tradition, I think, which allows people to get to know each other better and to study languages. So, but nowadays, the basis of the relations is not ideological, as it was during Soviet times. Soviet times it was Marxism-Leninism and ideology and confronting the United States. Right now our relations with Cuba is not directed at any other country.
And
So
it would probably be that your relations with Cuba are probably become more like your relationships with other countries.
absolutely, absolutely.
And you made a very important point. It's no longer an ideological reason. Last question, would it be fair to say that nowadays Russia probably has higher on their level of interest the relationships with its neighboring countries than, for instance, the Caribbean?
Well, as it is written in our foreign policy doctrine, the relationship with our immediate neighbors is the most important part of our foreign policy. So it's former Soviet states and the neighborhood.
And the neighborhood.
And the neighborhood. And of course, relationship with China, with India, with European Union countries, with the United States will be always important. But nowadays we are trying to probably to gain in the fields that were forgotten for some time, and we are now rebuilding and invigorating our relations with Latin America, because we think it is very important, because those relations have very good economic potential. Those relations can allow us to address common threats that you know probably in Central America, and it's in narco traffic and international crimes that has implications for Europe and for Russia as well, not only for the United States. So we are very interested in building joint programs in countering international crime, countering narcotics, and helping countries of the region in combating the natural disasters, because Russia has very good expertise in that.
So what I'm understanding is that today the differences, now that the ideology of the Cold War and the perspective of a hot war has been ended, is that now our interests are more aligned, where Russia's main focus is in developing its economy and its trade relationships, and trying to make that as stable as possible for its benefit. That's probably one of your main priorities. Okay?
Absolutely, you're absolutely right, sir.
Okay.
So,
Thank
yes,
you.
please.
Good afternoon again.
Good
Thank
afternoon.
you for joining us today. My name is Angel Castillo. I'm an attorney here in Miami. And I have a question for you in case you happen to know the answer. During all of the years that the Castro government was a client state of the old Soviet Union and was receiving tremendous amounts of both money and support, some of it was deemed to be people-to-people aid, but some of it was accounted for as loans from the Soviet Union to the Cuban government. My question is, to your understanding, is the Russian Federation the successor in interest as a creditor of Cuba or of any of those Soviet loans? And second, if you love the Cuban people so much, why don't you forgive those loans so that when we go back to Cuba, we don't owe Russia anything?
Well, I believe that the majority of the loans of Cuban debt was restructured a long time ago. I'm not aware of any significant payments that Cuba makes to Russia as the successor of the Soviet Union right now. And as for the second part of your question, I cannot answer that, because I would be happy as well as the majority of the Western Hemisphere states and the majority of the rest of the world if there is a free travel regime between the United States and Cuba.
As you know, Spain traded some its debt for some oranges and some other things, and I'm sure we have.
There's not enough cigars in Cuba.
I'm sure we have some sugar cane we can send you if you cancel those debts.
Let's take a last question.
Thank you for being here. Are
Thank
you
you.
planning on reopening the bases in Lourdes?
No, I'm not aware of that. I read those speculations, but I don't believe it's true.
Okay. We're very happy to have you, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.